What's good, everyone? G-Berg Stacks here. I just want to start off by saying free Sudan, right? I hope everybody who participated in their genocide, in their colonization, right, gets what they deserve, right? I'm talking about Europe, United States, and all of their allies, right? All right. Today, I mean, it's a funny topic to bring up when we're talking about freaking items in League of Legends, right? But that's exactly what we're doing, right? There's new, pretty much starter items in this game: Doran's bow, Doran's helm, and gluttonous greaves, right? So I want to compare them to pretty much their counterparts, right? Doran's bow's counterpart is Doran's blade. Doran's helm's counterpart is Doran's shield, and then gluttonous greaves. Obviously, you got to compare them to the other boots, the other upgraded boots, in order to see is it really worth it, right? So let's start off. The gold cost of Doran's bow, 400 gold. Very different from Doran's blade, right? It's an extra, or it's 50 less gold, which allows you to do a couple things, right? You can buy 2 health potions and have like a very good laning centric type of, I guess you could say, build or early purchase. Or you can buy 1 health potion and really play for a cheater recall, or play for, you know, trying to save as much gold as possible, right? Because already that's kind of what we see in the bot lane. We have people, or we have players trying to rush, right, as much gold as they can by taking stuff like triple tonic, cashback, right? And so saving that 50 gold with the avarice potion, or the elixir of avarice, which is the level 3 potion that you get from triple tonic, you're going to get an extra 110 gold on your champion, right? That much earlier. That can be, right, a very early pickaxe, right? Minus 110 gold. That means that a pickaxe is now 765 gold. That is about 6 minion waves, maybe less, depending on how good you're CSing. BF sword is now 1190 gold. That is maybe 9 minion waves, maybe 10, depending on how good you're CSing, right? And these are just things you have to really like think about, right? Outside of the stats that Doran's bow gives you, right? Because it does give you attack speed. And if you didn't know, attack speed, AD, and critical strike chance, those are 3 multiplicative like damage sources that ADs, like crit ADCs, love to have, right? And so when you're building like pure AD, like BF sword items, or just, you know, any AD item in the game, attack speed, especially for champions that want to auto attack, is going to be that much stronger, right? And then you also got to think about champions like Kaisa, Varus, these champions that have 3-hit passives. If you have something like Press the Attack or Lethal Tempo, right, it's going to be that much easier, that much faster for you to proc it, and it's going to give you a little bit more damage, right? Because you're, you know, subsequently you're going to be able to auto attack more, right? On most champions, it's going to give you an extra 9% attacks per second, or 10%, right? Which means that either every 10th or 11th basic attack is you're going to amass an extra basic attack compared to somebody who has Doran's blade, right? And the damage difference between Doran's bow and Doran's blade is like 4 damage, right? It's literally 4 damage at level 1, and then it's not going to get any different, you know, the higher level you are. But what is going to get difference is your attack speed ratio, right? Meaning that Doran's bow is eventually going to just be that much better, right? So Doran's bow is that much more damage, right? When you think of Doran's bow, you got to think about damage, right? Obviously, because the difference is not only does it give 1% less omnivamp than Doran's blade, but it doesn't give that 80 flat HP, right? So Doran's blade is still going to be the safer item, right? If you're in a harder matchup, it's going to give you more access to immediate HP, right? Because the difference in omnivamp doesn't matter too much if you're not allowed to hit the minion wave, right? because Doran's like 1% Omnivamp does not matter until you have some damage, right? Some flat AD, right? Once you have flat AD, you're gonna see a little bit more difference in that 1% Omnivamp, right? You're gonna get maybe an extra 2 HP or an extra 3 HP that you wouldn't get from Doran's Bow because of the difference in Omnivamp, right? And so Doran's Blade, if you have access to the wave, or even if you don't, if depending on how little access you have to the wave, Doran's Blade is going to be a safer option, but it's going to scale a lot worse, right? With every single item you buy in the marksman category, every single legendary item, even probably every single epic item aside from maybe Sheen, you're going to just get less value out of Doran's Blade now that Doran's Bow exists, right? That's just kind of how you want to think about it. Obviously, there are some champions that you're not going to want Doran's Bow on, right? We're thinking Jhin, we're thinking Samira, we're thinking maybe Nyla, maybe not, depending on the matchup, right? Maybe the 80 HP is just that much better at securing your all-in, right? If you need to all-in, right? But maybe she goes Doran's Helm. Maybe she goes, there's a few players that already went Doran's Shield. Maybe Doran's Helm is really good on her too, right? But that's what you got to think about when choosing between these two items, right? And then the attack speed, right? For champions like Jinx, where Hex Optics actually becomes or is now your best item. Where champions like Misfortune, who, why would you even care about the Omnivamp that Doran's Blade gives you when you're rushing a Bloodthirster, right? You're getting that much, you're getting a high amount of lifesteal, which is going to offset the difference in Omnivamp. But now you get the attack speed, which just allows you to use that lifesteal that much more if you're able to basic attack, of course, right? So these are just a couple things, right? We have to think about how it works, not only with our champion, how it works with the items that we're going to build, right? And like I said, Doran's Bow is going to be a more, not only scaling, but it's going to be more of an all-in item, where if you're going for those early game fights, we don't see a lot of Ignite in the game anymore, at least for the bot lane, because it's like kind of trying to be as safe as possible. We have a lot of barrier as well. We are getting some exhausts. Exhaust might be a little bit more prevalent because of Doran's Bow, but with no Ignite, that does mean that health potions, you're going to get as much HP from them as possible, right? So it makes Doran's Bow a little bit better, especially if you're able to, let's say you buy both of the potions, right? Let's say you buy Doran's Bow and 2 pots. If you're able to live for more than 30 seconds, you're going to get more HP than Doran's Blade, right? Because I talked about the difference in the Omnivamp is just 1 HP until you get some AD, until you get some items, mostly until you get some items, right? You have to auto attack 40 times with Doran's Blade in order for you to get the same amount of HP that you can get from the both potions and the Omnivamp that Doran's Bow gives you. Pretty simple, right? And you have to think about how often can you auto attack 40 times, or how quickly can you auto attack 40 times? Do you have access to the wave? Things like that, right? Another thing, because Doran's Bow gives you more, it gives you attack speed as opposed to Doran's Blade. This gives you more pushing power, right? We're talking about basic attacks, right? And the only way you're going to be able to basic attack is if you have pushing power, right? If you have the ability to attack the minion waves. And getting pushing power just means that, you're able to dictate the lane that much more, right? So we'll see. This is a big, addition for champions like Kalista, for champions like Varus, for champions like Kai'Sa, for, a lot of different champions in the game, right? I like this addition. It's a great addition. And, we'll see what people cook up. Okay, let's get into Doran's Helm and Doran's Shield, right? So, a very big addition to the game. We have a Doran's item that gives armor and MR, right? The only one that we had that tanks could really use, especially tanks that, you know, that didn't have like any AD scaling or too much AD scaling, right? Or there were tanks that didn't really have, or they had armor and MR scaling, right? We didn't have anything, right? For champions that wanted to like start cloth armor, that wanted to start magic, no magic mantle, they didn't have anything. But now we have Doran's helm, right? So both of these tanky starter items or Doran's items, both do still cost 450 gold. But now we have one that gives 10 armor and magic resistance, right? Still gives you that attacks deal 5% bonus physical damage to minions, which is good. It doesn't mess up your CS patterns, right? But the big difference here is what I believe, outside of the champions that have innate scaling off of armor and MR, right? Champions like, I think, oh, definitely Cassante, right? Malphite, champions like that, right? Who would buy this just to have a better lane versus, or just more damage versus whoever they're going against, right? Usually you play these champions as counters. But Cassante is actually no need to build, you know, no need to play versus a counter because you're just that strong. And now you're even stronger, right? But Doran's helm will be not only a more scaling option, right? But you will have, you will effectively have less HP, right? If we see the amount of damage reduced, right? Let's just take into account physical damage, right? Right now it's 26%. You buy this, right? 10 more armor, you get 32%, right? So 6% reduced physical damage from an enemy champion's combo is not that much saved HP. It's probably as much as Doran's shield. And then what Doran's shield does offer you though is, you know, extra HP regen, which will give you, especially in the early game, right? Before your first base, Doran's shield will give you more HP. There's just no there's no like counter against it, right? Or there's no counter fact against it, right? What it won't give you though is more all-in potential, right? If the enemy champion, no matter how much HP you have, especially if they're an ignite user, right? If they're an ignite user, it actually stops a good amount of what Doran's shield does, right? It stops the HP regen that you have, or at least or it reduces it by 40%, right? That's not going to happen with Doran's helm, right? So if you're going against like a Riven or something, you know they're going to take ignite just to try to get very early game damage, or just to try to bully you out or kill you, whatever, right? Eliminate you, take you down. Doran's helm is better against champions like that. But after your first base, right, Doran's shield doesn't really help too much unless you're going against champions that have damage over time, right? Deathfire's touch has been introduced into the new season, so we will see how many top lane champions use that, if it becomes prevalent in the top lane, right? We still have champions like Teemo, ADCs, right? So Doran's shield will have its place, but versus the bruisers, Doran's helm is going to be that much better, right? Another thing, Doran's shield, you know, after you get your first item, after you get your second item, it's kind of just a hindrance in your inventory, right? So often you sell it, right? Because the restoration of HP that it gives you is not going to be that much, right? It's going to be even worse than a refillable potion, right? But Doran's helm, that 10 armor and MR, is going to scale that much more, right? Imagine a Mundo, right? Mundos don't usually get that much resistances until like maybe their third, fourth item, because if you're talking about Mundo top lane, you're getting Warmogs, you're getting Heartsteel, right? You're getting an extra like 2,000 HP, and what pairs amazing with that HP? Armor and magic resist, right? So, you know, things like that, it's just going to make some of these champions scale that much harder, right? Champions like Shen, you know, these scaling or relatively early game champions, right? They're going to be that much stronger, right? Someone like Cassante. So I think Doran's helm is going to be a great addition. It's going to be similar to Doran's bow, where you're going to be looking for an early base, because every ruby crystal that you buy, every other no magic mantle or cloth armor that you buy is going to be that much stronger. Every refillable potion that you buy, or every potion, usually refillable, right? That extra HP that you get, Doran's Helm is going to give you that much more damage reduction, right? And so it is kind of, it's going to be really good. With this, I do think it's going to be maybe less seen, you know, once people figure out the best metas, right? But especially with runes like Phase Rush being gone, we're gonna start seeing like the top lane meta be very different, right? Because Garen lost a huge keystone, Nasus lost a big keystone, right? Darius is a very big bully, and people loved playing Phase Rush Darius. It was relatively new, but now that's gone, and we'll see how good these champions really get. So finally, let's talk about the boots, right? Gluttonous Greaves. If you look at the gold cost, 950. This is the second, I guess, costly boot. The second least costly boot in the game, or boots upgrade, right? Where Ionian boots is 900, Gluttonous Greaves is 950. That is really good for, you know, early game power spikes, right? I'm gonna say the power spike on these boots isn't that big early, but these are kind of a scaling boot. These are definitely a scaling boot, right? I think these are probably one of the only scaling boots in the game, aside from maybe Berserker Greaves and Ionian boots, I can say, and Sorkpen to some degree, right? So let's talk about the stats, right? 45 movement speed. There's no difference in movement speed aside from Boots of Swiftness, right? Has the flat 45 that every upgraded boot, aside from Boots of Swiftness, has. But it gives you Omnivamp. It gives you a flat 4% upon purchase. That is pretty, not that good. It's pretty mediocre. It does remind me of Ravenous Hunter. If y'all remember the final, one of the final runes. I don't know if it had like a definitive name of that row, but of the domination tree, where upon takedown of unique champions, you would gain 1.2% Omnivamp up to a total of 6%, right? And when that was in the game, even before it got nerfed to where it used to give you, just by taking it, used to give you, like, I believe 1% Omnivamp, maybe less. Everybody still took it. That's how strong Omnivamp was in the game, right? Omnivamp is so strong, it's literally only on, like, 3 items, right? It's on Gunblade, it's on Riftmaker, and now it's on Endless Hunger, right? Those are literally the only 3 items in the game that have Omnivamp, which is pretty cool, right? But now there's a new one, Gluttonous Greaves. And so 4%, it might not seem like a lot, but given base damages, given trade patterns, given the fact that a lot of champions have healing in their kit, they have shielding in their kit, some of their best first items, right? Stuff like Sundered Sky, stuff like Eclipse, healing and shielding, right? And then you even have stuff like Armor Shred or Magic Resist Shred or Flat Penetration, right? Making their damage that much stronger. Item effects. Omnivamp heals you based on all of that, right? Stuff like Blackfire Torch, stuff like Deathfire Touch is now in the game, right? All these things that deal damage are gonna benefit from that Omnivamp for you, right? And that's kind of what, you know, you gotta think about. How much benefit do I get from this Omnivamp? If I'm able to deal 1,000 damage, how much healing do I get? You get like 40 healing. Is that a lot? It's not too much, but you do get that off of minions, right? You do. It is 33% healing off of AoE damage on minions, right? So like, you know, Kaisa, she doesn't have any like AoE damage, right? Mostly we're thinking Brand W, right? That explosion, if it deals 300 to enemy minions, you're only healing 33% of the total damage that you dealt, right? However much that is. But a cool passive of these boots, or they have a passive, right, where they have the Slay passive. Gain 1% Omnivamp on champion takedown, stacking up to 6 times, right? And it's not unique champion. So if they have a feeder on the enemy team, you can just continuously beat that person down and stack this so that when you're going against the carries of the enemy team, you're gonna fight them with 10% Omnivamp, meaning you're that much harder to kill, meaning that these boots are that much better in solo queue, right? But even getting 1% more Omnivamp, right? Getting 1 takedown means you already have endless hunger amounts of Omnivamp, right? And endless hunger is a really strong item in the game right now, right? But if you get up to max stacks, now you have Riftmaker amounts of Omnivamp. Now you have Gunblade amounts of Omnivamp, right? Riftmaker Omnivamp is only 6% for range, 10% for melee. So if you get 2 takedowns, you have ranged Omnivamp from Riftmaker off of your boots, right? That's very, very strong, right? You can think of Omnivamp as offensive and defensive. Obviously, the defensive nature is you get healing, but that healing means that, or hopefully means that you're able to, with that extra health, wait for your cooldowns, or, you know, basic attack more to deal more damage, right? Which then becomes another, you know, circle of healing and damage and blah blah blah, right? So I think these boots are going to be very good in the mid lane because of the role quest. If you know, we're going to talk about it in a bit, but I think it's going to be less popular in the mid lane than it will be in the bot lane, in the top lane, even in the jungle, right? So finally, let's talk about the upgraded boots, right? The upgraded gluttonous greaves. They're called Immortal Path, right? So the base stats stay the same, which is very different from all the other boots, right? When you upgrade them, the base stats change, or the base stats get upgraded, right? But for Immortal Path, they do not, right? But what they get, just like every other boot, they get a new passive, right? So while above half health, you deal 5% increased damage. That's not terrible. 5% increased damage does mean that you're healing more off the damage you deal because you're dealing more damage, right? More burst, and yeah, right? But while you're below half health, you gain 15% increased healing, shielding, and regeneration. The way it's worded makes me think that you don't get increased healing off of your Omnivamp, but maybe it's specifically coded to where you do, right? It's easily testable. I'll probably have something on the screen that's if it's yes or no. But this also means that you get increased healing and shielding from your items. You get increased healing and shielding from your teammates. So overall, can be very good, can be very strong. I do think these boots, this is why I said it, these boots in the mid lane aren't going to be amazing, because the upgraded boots are just not the best, in my opinion. You're getting Chemtech Dragon Soul, which is obviously not terrible, but, you know, you're not getting 18 flat magic penetration and 8% magic penetration, right? It's less bursty, more sustain, right? More like built on depending on your items, right? If your items give you healing and shielding, it's just going to be that much stronger. If your teammates give you healing and shielding, it's just going to be that much more of a reason to actually buy these boots, right? When you're in the mid lane. Because they don't upgrade anything, right? If you're still not able to get the takedowns, right? You're not able to fully stack it that early. You know, they're not as good. But the upgrade is good. Let's say you're not able to stack it that early, but you want to be more tanky. The 15% increased healing and shielding can be very strong, right? If you have somebody like a Soraka, if you have somebody like a Sona, like a Seraphine, that's just going to make you that much stronger, right? But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope, you know, you learned something. I hope Maybe you can teach somebody else, right? Talk about it. Let me know what you think about these items. I think they're fairly cool. I think they're great additions to the game. They're gonna really spice up the new season, right? And so let's see where it takes us. All right, peace.